Welcome to the Box Score Sports Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Box Score Sports YouTube channel. I'm your host, Ryan, and today I am sadly going to talk about the Pistons hitting the 25-game mark as far as losing streak goes. I'm going to talk about how we got here as Pistons fans and what I would do to get out of it. And realistically, what I would do to get out of where we are right now. And it's frustrating. Let's start right there, right? Like, as a Piston fan, I've been a Piston fan since 2000-ish, right? I got to watch the go to work Pistons, and we lived through the weirdness of trading Chauncey Billups and hoping Rodney Stuckey and Aaron Follow were going to be a thing, and then we went and got Villanueva and Ben Gordon, and then we went and eventually got Josh Smith and then Andre Drummond, and Reggie Jackson. We went through all of it. And yet through everything that the Pistons have gone through, and maybe it's because it's got to be a little bit of recency bias. This is one that is just, it's ridiculous. It is. It's ridiculous. So again, I want to go over why I think we got here and what I would do to move forward. So let's start with the first part. How did we get here? Why are we in this position? I got three reasons, and obviously I'm leaving the owner out of it, although he's a big part of it, Tom Gore. And maybe I'll put him in there. So there's going to be four reasons. I got one that my first one is sort of like, I'm just going to go over it real quickly. It's just an excuse. It's a dumb excuse, but it's a real excuse that some franchise can have time to time. But bear with me, guys. This is not the main reason. It's not the most important reason, but it is a reason, and we have to acknowledge that dumb luck does play a factor in this. Injuries, for instance, is dumb luck, right? Monte Morris has been injured all year. Bogdanovich started the year off injured. Last year, Cade was injured most of the year. So there's just some semblance of dumb luck, right? And the other dumb luck is the lottery, right? We got the number one pick a couple years back, right? Now, the last 2 years, we get the number 5 pick when we had a lot of options in that top 3 area that would have been perfect to fit alongside, whether it was Cade and Ivy, right? That's dumb luck. So let's acknowledge that, move out of the way. It's not we're not going to address it anymore, but it's worth acknowledging. Okay, the second thing that or reason why I think we're in this situation is coaching. And this falls on the GM and it falls on the owner as well. Because even though when we look at like Dwayne Casey and Monte Williams, the problem that I have with both of them is neither one of them, especially Monte Williams, were developmental coaches. And that's what you need in a situation with young teams. And I was one of the less optimistic fans. I wasn't very optimistic when they hired Monte Williams. I wasn't. I thought it could be good, but I was like, there was just couple red flags. I even posted a video on it when I did the season preview for the Pistons. You can check that out. I won't get too far into it. Just basically, you knew he didn't want to coach. They had to throw a bunch of money at him, so that's never a good sign, right? His record without Chris Paul, he's only has one winning season without Chris Paul, and he had Anthony Davis on his team. Okay. So that's kind of a red flag. He and the last thing is he just never developed anyone. There's no proof that he had the ability to develop a young talent. The biggest opportunity he had for that was DeAndre Ayton, and he was unable to connect with him, which we will talk about in a second. But like that's a concern. You look at Bridges and how well he's doing in Brooklyn. Like Monte had that in front of him the entire time, but never unlocked it, never unleashed it. That's a problem, right? His developmental skills is not there. Dwayne Casey too, like in a lesser extent, like we went and hired these coaches that had success with veteran rosters, instead of looking at coaches that might have had success building young rosters up. Monte Williams, the difference between Monte Williams and Dwayne Casey is very little. Yes, they have different systems, but I mean, like, why they were successful. They had veteran players, and they were able to coach veteran players to win, and they had a measure of success doing so. Dwayne Casey just could not get through LeBron James. There's no crime in that, right? That doesn't mean you're a bad coach. It just means that when it comes down to the playoffs, to the final part of the season, it ends up being on the players. And with Monty Williams, it was the same thing. He got to the finals. That's awesome. And everybody was excited about it. But if you remember in that playoffs, he played against the Clippers without Kawhi Leonard, and they almost lost that series. Like, I don't want to say almost lost because they won it in 6, but if you go back and look, I think the first 5 games or the games that they won, the point differential up until the last game was like 18 points or less. I can't remember. Every game came down to the final 2 minutes. If you had Kawhi Leonard in that series, I don't think the Suns ever get to the finals. So I'm just throwing that out there. The other, and when it comes to the DeAndre Ayton thing, it scared me because coaches, their job is to connect with their players, but Monty Williams seems like a coach that wants his players to connect with him, right? If you're not my style of player, I'm going to make life hard on you. We saw what he did with DeAndre Ayton. We see what he's doing with Jaden Ivey. The way he treats Jaden Ivey just blows my mind. This team is not good enough for him to be yanking and pulling on Jaden Ivey's, emotional strings like that, right? And it's no wonder that, like, Jaden Ivey, he shot 34% from 3 last year. He's shooting 27% from 3 right now, right? Alex Burks is shooting one of his worst seasons. This is the worst season he shot from 3-point line since, like, 2017. Isaiah Livers, people are like, well, Isaiah Livers is trash out there. He's not doing, and I agree, like, he's not playing very well right now, and he shouldn't be getting minutes. But he shot 46%, 42% and 36% the last 2 years, and he's shooting 24% this year. At some point, you got to be like, well, the coach is not putting the right system around him. The players are probably thinking too much. When you're thinking, I remember there was this one, I think it was against, it was like 3 or 4 games ago. Ivy just sat in the third quarter. He went out there and just sat in the corner. I'm like, that's such a waste of talent. Eventually, he got subbed out, and he looked so defeated going to the bench. Looked so defeated. There was no reason for Ivy to be coming off the bench. When I brought this up on Twitter, I said it to some Piston fans. I'm like, it's a little bit of a red flag. They got that he was coming off the bench. I said, that's a little bit of a red flag. I think that's a fair statement. And yet they all came at me like, oh, you don't know ball. You don't know ball. It's like, guys, like, he's our 5th overall pick last year that started a ton of games. Him and our primary concern as Detroit Piston fans is the development of Duren, of Cade, and of Ivy. We want those 3 guys to work together, and Asar, obviously. But, like, I'm just saying, the fact that our backcourt it doesn't have Cade and Ivy back there working together, trying to figure each other out, the best way to work with one another, that is a concern to me. I'm not saying that was the end of the world, but it is a concern. And as we could see throughout the last 25-game losing streak, we had reason to be concerned. He was the 11th guy off the bench one game. The 11th guy. He didn't come in until the second quarter. He was the 11th guy off the bench, and it's ridiculous. This is the coach that we chose. Somebody who doesn't connect with the players, but expects the players to connect with him. You don't do things my way, you're not getting minutes. You don't put effort on defense, you aren't getting minutes. Sometimes, Mike Malone, I watched a Nuggets Clippers game, and Mike Malone, it was the Clippers game where I think Jamal Murray and Jokic were out. And I believe it was the young player Watson. I believe that was his name. I could be wrong. But I remember him making a mistake, and it was a clear mistake. It was like, ooh, man, he didn't switch or something. It was a bad mistake. He was a young player, though. And he's coming off the the court, and you could tell he looks so, like defeated as far as like he just feels dumb about himself at this point. And Mike Malone went up to him, pat him on his chest. He said, we know what you did. It's okay. Basically, I'm not saying that's what he said, but you could see he's like, just don't beat yourself up. After the timeout, the guy's still on the floor. It's like, that's the kind of coach that the Pistons need. A developmental coach, somebody who's going to work with these young players, that's going to let them live through mistakes. Monty Williams was never that guy. I'm not saying Monty Williams is a bad coach. I'm saying that he's good with veteran players. I've never seen him be good with young players. So that's partly why we're here. We looked at his success, and even Piston fans fell into this. I didn't fall into it as much, but I thought it could be a good thing, but I'm a little worried about these things. Piston fans didn't want to hear it. Now we're seeing it. See, this is why we got to be cautious or real. We need to be real about these things because as fans, we got to protect ourselves in a sense. Anyway, the GM is the third problem I want to talk about. Now, Weaver has done good things. To sit there and be like, this guy's trash, I don't think that's fair. But because his drafting has been good, right? He has good drafting. Say what you want. I know Sadiq Bey ain't on a team anymore, but man, the fact we only got James Wiseman for him is rough. Everybody's looking for 3-and-D wings. I don't know how we only got James Wiseman for him. I think that's ridiculous. But that's a good pick because that guy's going to be in the league for forever. He's going to be a starter. He's going to be a six-man for what, 10, 15 years. Isaiah Stewart's a good pick. Cade is a good pick. Ivy's a good pick. Sasser was a good pick, right? Duran was a good pick. Asar looks like a good pick. So Livers was a good pick until like this year. He's not looking so hot, but partly I think the players are thinking way too much. That's, because of the coaching, but I digress. Those were good picks. The only pick that was awful was Killian Hayes because Halliburton was there, and that's who they should have drafted was Halliburton. They didn't draft Halliburton. So that just shows me that he's good at scouting. He's going to get a job somewhere as a head scout or an assistant GM because he's really good at seeing talent in the draft. The problem is he overvalues his own assets. And because he overvalues his own assets, it was hard. It slowed down the rebuild. He overvalued Jeremy Grant. He didn't want to trade him after the first year he was here because he was part of our future. Bogdanovich is now part of our future. Alec Burks is probably part of our future. Like, this guy doesn't understand, like, making the most of your assets that you have put in place. So like Jeremy Grant, for instance, there was plenty of reports that showed that people were interested in Jeremy Grant the first year after he was with the Pistons and were willing to give up 1 to 2 first-round picks for him. He said, no, this guy's part of our future. No, he's not. We're one of the worst teams in the league. What do you mean he's part of our future? You develop this great assets. There's a lot of teams that want him. Just trade him. Get 2 first-round picks. Now he did end up helping us get Duran, but you understand what I'm saying. The same with Sadiq Bey. Like, Sadiq Bey, I looked up articles not too long ago where it was like the year before he got traded, there was teams that were offering first-round picks for Sadiq Bey plus player or something like that, right? And it's like all we got was James Wiseman for him. Now, I didn't mind Weaver taking a swing at Wiseman. Like, he's a talent. He needs minutes. He could get minutes in Detroit. We were like 14 and 50 or whatever. Like, it wasn't that big of a deal to me. However, the fact that that's all we got for Sadiq Bey, that was the bigger deal. It's like, come on, what are we doing here? So Weaver, and then like, I don't even know if Weaver wanted Monty Williams. I think he was in on the Casey hiring, but I don't know if he even wanted Monty Williams. I think that was a Tom Gore coaching selection. So to be fair to Weaver, I'm not going to quite blame him for this hire, but he's done enough to not have a job. Also, his obsession with centers and not wings in a league that you need long wings players. You got to be able to go down to a small ball. Like, it's funny because Stewart's like a perfect small ball 5, but we don't have good enough wings to have him out there as a small ball 5. Isn't that funny? He's like so dumb. And what blows my mind when it comes to all these these things, whether it's the dumb luck, whether it's the coaching, whether it's the GM, or even like I mentioned, the owner stepping in, meddling, not wanting to trade certain players like Andre Drummond, going out and trying to get this coach that did not want to coach and throwing a ton of money at him, thinking that's going to fix the problem. He's part of the problem. But you put all this together, the biggest issue I have is that this team is not a worse roster than it was last year. And people are saying like, oh, the pieces don't fit. There's a good collection of talent, but the pieces aren't fitting together. Guys, it might not be the pieces. It just might be the coaching. It might be that simple. It might just be the coaching. Maybe the coach doesn't know how to put the right pieces together. Because I don't understand how we were better last year than we were this year. That blows my mind right now. I just don't get it. Now, Duran's been injured a couple times already this year. Bojan finally just came back. So you can use those as excuses. But like, to me, I think that if you put Cade next to Ivy, you have Bojan at the 4, you put someone at the 3, you could put, Liver's shooting so bad. But I think you should just, personally, I think you should just run the 3 guards together because at least Killian can move the ball. Killian's not like, he's a good bench guard. He's a good third guard. He'll be a good third guard. I mean, you could play Sasser. You could have Sasser, Ivy, and Cade. Cade can cover bigger players. He's 6'7", 6'8". That's what was the point of drafting Cade for point guard. It's like, it makes your team entirely switchable. He could play the 3 on defense. He could play the 1. He could play the 2. Just do what you got to do. Now, he's got to stay in front of his guy, as he acknowledged last night. But come on. What are we doing here? Bagley at the 5 right now? You just need to have floor spacing. Now, Stewart has been shooting 36% from 3 this year. That's good. But I don't know. I just think you should run pace and space right now. Pace and space. I just think the coaching has really gotten to these guys' head. I don't think any of the guys like the coach. It doesn't feel like that. The vibes are not like that. It just isn't. I think it's because the coach doesn't know how to connect with players, young players especially. Monty needed to be on a veteran team, and he's not. So how do we fix this, guys? Because, like, obviously, what do we do? Well, this is my suggestion. We could make trades. I don't think I want Weaver trading anybody for anything, unless if it's like an obviously good player, right? And that will probably happen, right? But who's going to go? Because you got to trade someone. It's going to be Stewart. It could be Thompson, could be Ivy. Like, if you're going to get really good players around Cade, you got to trade the guys that we have put a lot of hope in the last couple of years, right? That's what you got to do. I don't know if I want that. But we have to do something, right? Tom Gord selling the team, I don't think that's going to happen. The NBA isn't going to step in. I think a lot of Pistons fans like, the NBA has got to step in. No, guys, they don't. Like, look at the 76ers for 5 years? We're a terrible franchise. They never stepped in. They were like, they constantly got a top 3 pick. Never stepped in. They're not going to step in. They're not going to step in here. Tom Gore, he's just got to get his hands out of the franchise. He's got to let whoever like Dolan did the same thing, right? Now look at the Knicks. Well, I think Dolan was kind of always like that though, right? Like, bad owners have had good teams. It's possible. So I don't know if selling the team is going to happen. I would hope for it to happen. Also, moving the team. I've heard people move the team. Why would you want them to move the team out of Detroit? The NBA doesn't even want that. The NBA wants to expand. They want to bring in Seattle and in Las Vegas. They want to go to 32 teams. They want to expand their league. They don't want Detroit being moved to one of those spots. They want Detroit. Detroit has a rich history of basketball. That's ridiculous. For me, I would just fire your GM. I'd fire Weaver and I'd fire Monty Williams right now. That's what I'd do. I would bring in a coach, much like Atlanta did last year with Dan Quinn. You might be like, well, who would you suggest? I during our live podcast, I suggested a couple different head coaches. Mark Jackson, who had a good development process, good years developing Steph and Clay, right? He's part of the reason why Clay stayed on the Warriors. He saw the talent with Clay, and he's like, we're not trading him for Kevin Love. He was part of the reason why they didn't do that. But he's part of the reason, like the Warriors, the players give him a lot of credit for their development. So Mark Jackson's one. I'd bring in Bud. Look what he did with the Atlanta Hawks. He's able to put a very simple system around players that players understand and can handle. I think that this team could use something like that. As they just develop around a really good system, and then they can just make their game expand. Like, like their ball handling, their shooting. They can focus on that stuff instead of just the system, because Bud has a very simple system. And Kenny Atkinson's the other guy. What he did in Brooklyn before Durant and Kyrie went there, the people he won with, I just think there's some potential there. So those are the three I would look at. As far as GMs go, I'll be honest with you guys. I'm not really into the GM scene right now, so I'm not going to sit there and throw out suggestions for that. But I think it's time to move on. You got to make one move. You got to make one move to get just one other shooter in here, somebody who can play and shoot the basketball. But the problem is, there's a high demand for that. What the Pistons need, there's a high demand for that. And I don't know if, number one, they got the assets, or number two, we want to trade the assets that are required for that shooter and that wing player. That's how I feel. Like, if you want Lauri Markkanen, you're going to have to trade some good players and assets to get him. If you want OG Anunoby, you're going to have to trade good players and assets. So it's like, yeah, let's go out and get these guys. But are you ready to maybe part ways with Jaden Ivey already? Are you ready to part ways with Asar Thompson already? Like, that's the moves you'd have to do. So that's all I got. This is how I feel we got here. It's sad. It's pathetic. It's embarrassing. Do I want Tom Gore to sell the team? Absolutely, but he's not going to. Like, come on. This is 30 people, and I don't think the NBA is going to step in. Maybe I'm wrong, but let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are. What do you think the Pistons should do moving forward? Yeah, I don't know, guys. That's all I have. So thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and we will talk to you guys soon. Thanks so much for watching this clip of the Box Score Sports Podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channel. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter or X. And we'll talk to you guys real soon. See ya.